Hey, welcome to the Dwayne and Jennifer Podcast. Jennifer, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, Dwayne, it's kind of an interesting subject. We closed our church, fired ourselves in essence, and we're going to talk about that and why.
So I think it'll be an interesting one. Huge news, pretty significant transition for the Roberts. I think you're going to want to stick around. It'll be a fun one. Okay, fun one. I'm not sure.
More like sad.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's been quite an emotional 1.5, 2-year experience for us.
Yeah.
I'd say even maybe a little longer.
You think?
Yeah. So we've not really talked on the podcast pretty much, I don't think at all, on really what we've been doing the last kind of 4 years. We've kind of talked maybe some of our values, but
we've alluded to it, but we
on purpose.
Yeah. We want to be under the radar.
And it's been an amazing kind of three and a half years. It's been an incredible ride, like a outrageous kind of crazy ride. But yeah, we want to give you a little background and then what led us up to actually what we've learned, what led us to actually close our church that we had planted in 2021, and kind of a little bit what we're doing next. So 2013, Jennifer moved to Brazil and I followed her.
That was it. It's pretty accurate.
Is it? Okay.
I've been dragging you around the nations for decades.
Yeah. So we moved to Brazil, 6 years there basically. Moved back to the States July 4th,
yep.
Officially 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Our daughter Sydney got married August.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 days later, we moved to Denver and we pastored Upper Room Church there during we started I think September 2019. And then 2020, that was a crazy season. 2020.
It was crazy. And I think one of the things we didn't understand was that culture had shifted so much in the 6 years that we were away. Like there were new terms. I didn't know the new terms. Some of the old terms that I used to know the definition, the word was the same, but the definition meant something different. So we were in shock, transitioning back from Brazil, entering into a new church culture, and then all the things that were happening with COVID and the racial conversation. It was 60% of pastors were quitting in that season.
It was one of the more intense
Yes.
seasons of ministry that I've ever done.
Yeah, really intense.
It was insane because you got COVID. You've got then a real serious issue on just the journey of race within the U.S. Then
Yep.
we had politics, Trump, and all of that. And then you had the prophetic.
Yeah.
And the prophetic went crazy in 2020. So
it was disillusioning at best.
it was insane, I think, and just kind of give you a little back, some of you might not know. Let me say it that way. We spent basically 10 years in our 20s with Youth with a Mission. So 6 years in Amsterdam and then 4 years in Budapest, Hungary. And there was just certain things that kind of led us to go, you know what, there's more that we want to experience within ministry. It was a real itch within me. And that's what kind of, long story short, took us to Kansas City. We were only going to be in KC for a year. And then jumped into the House of Prayer at the very beginning there. And then discontentment, wrestling, the crucible experience led us to Brazil. And so we had the House of...
No, that's not what led us to Brazil.
You're right. We went through a crucible. But we wanted... Yeah, you're right. What led us to Brazil? What would you say?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer is God, but everyone's going, yeah, duh. I mean, we had a desire for, first of all, we began to fall in love with the nation, like in a way that I had never experienced in other travels we had done. A nation hadn't entered my heart the same way that Brazil had.
Right.
And so, like, I'm thinking about it all the time. My heart is aching for what people are experiencing. And so we went there because we wanted to see a praying church established.
And I think,
And we're gringos, man. So you go with a gringo mindset and you get transformed in the process.
Yes.
And so I love Brazil still to this day. I love it so much. I love the people. I love the culture. I am well aware of the dysfunction and the things that are broken. I get that. But I love it.
It's an amazing place.
It really was an amazing place. And there were extreme highs and extreme lows.
In Brazil. Yeah.
Both with people and culture.
And ministry.
But we were exhausted coming home for sure.
And I think so that led to 2019, 2020. And so 2020, 2021, I just wanted to give you that little bit of history because we've had a really kind of very broad experience within ministry and within missions. So we've had the incredible privilege to live internationally in like 3-4 different nations internationally. It's been beautiful. And then we've had a really broad experience within ministry, missions to, parachurch, different parachurch ministries. Then we're now in the church. And so it's been
planting churches.
Yeah. So it's been pretty interesting and we've had a lot of different experiences. And it kind of led to a crisis in 2021 for us.
Yes.
Because I was just looking at the effectiveness of the church and a little bit disillusioned by the church, to be honest with you. And
capital C church.
Yeah, capital C church. Like, what are we producing? Mm-hmm. How are we producing disciples that look, love, act like Jesus? And I was just, I don't know if we're hitting the mark. And then for me, the politics that then impacted the church in 2020, I just felt we were more of a voting population within the American culture, society, political system than we actually were in representing Christ. And
yes, for sure.
And so, long story short, we resigned from the church in Denver. It was, the Lord spoke incredibly clear we were to resign. And in resigning, I had kind of resigned from ministry. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. We've had some truly crucible experiences. It seemed like it, just went on for over a decade, just hard, pioneering or whatever. And so there was for 2021, we had resigned, didn't know what we were going to do, like had no idea what we were going to do, but God told us to resign.
But the church was very generous, and
Yes.
we had like a 4-month severance package. So at least we could not be stressed about money right away.
It was beautiful. But it was in that season, I ran into, talking with a couple of friends, and a man that had a tremendous impact on me in that season was Michael Brodeur. He has a website called Pastor's Coach, and he provoked me. He asked me some questions, and I ended up taking a master class of his that really shifted a couple of things for me. Mm-hmm. And really, Ephesians 4 massively shifted for me. And so it's where Jesus, he descends and then he ascends. And in his ascension, he takes the giftings that he has and he splits them up so that together we would represent him. And in that, he talks about the apostle, prophet, pastor, evangelist, and the teacher. And we've had such a fascination with those 5 titles that we've, I think, lost the vision for their purpose. Because the next verse 12 says, these exist so that we would equip the saint for ministry. And that was just revolutionary for me. I'm like, oh, I'm not even supposed to be on the field. I'm supposed to be the coach. And maybe we're doing things maybe a little off kilter. And so I've had a couple of more of those types of just paradigm shifting ideas about church. And so January, February, March of 2021, we were praying daily, God, what are we going to do? And also I'm studying some of the topics around church and community and our purpose and how we're to live and relate to one another. And, you know, Michael Burdura would say the addiction to the platform needs to be broken. The addiction for the pastor and the addiction for the congregant. So I just had these shifting ideas. So that led us to go, I went down this bunny trail and I studied.
But it was, that whole season was really complex for us because it was very disillusioning. Like looking around the landscape of the body of Christ, like you said, the political issues, I made a comment that I didn't think the Bible and the Constitution of the United States were equal. And I was called a communist. It was like, oh my gosh. So just seeing how twisted
yes.
and ingrown and weird the church had become.
Yes.
Now, and we're not church bashers. Like we
No.
believe in
We
the
believe
church.
in the church.
This is the vehicle the Lord uses.
100%.
I don't know how he's going to present us spotless and without wrinkle. He says he's going to. Right now I look around and I just don't see that.
It's but by God.
It's but by God. Yes,
You know,
there is
it's
no.
by his Spirit
yeah.
he's going to bring us to
So,
that maturity.
I mean, just to reiterate what you were, where you were at and where I was at in the whole process of, man, we're tired of playing church, doing ministry, business as usual. Surely there's another way. Surely there's a way that produces quality disciples. And so we definitely went on a journey. I mean, I remember thinking for the first time we were in worship and there's all of a sudden a camera person taking pictures of me during worship, and not just me, but everyone. And for the first time in my whole ministry expression, I went, that's weird. Yet we had done it in all of our previous churches and events. And all of a sudden I'm going, and again, like I'm not judging, I did it, but it was, why are we taking
yes.
pictures during worship? It's become an enterprise. It's become a social media movement. Oh my gosh, how far off are we? So we started with us.
100% we started with us. And that's depressing sometimes because you're like, oh my gosh.
And we started making calls.
I am not lined up with the Bible,
right.
with the Bible, and I need to adjust to my thinking,
yes.
my role, how I define myself according to the scripture,
yeah.
and then how do I function? Like it was discombobulated.
It was pivotal.
It was pivotal. And it was in there that we jumped into. I started to study house church, and if you know, some of you might know that's my background has been part of my background. Let me say it that way, has been big events, and I've enjoyed it. I love when there's a large corporate gathering. It's beautiful, the body of Christ together, and so it was a huge shift for us to go, no, I want to actually do something small. And so we had a vision to do house churches. And
it was such a huge shift that it was alarming to our friends.
A lot of people. I actually had a hard time finding friends back then because they're going, Dwayne is doing house church? Like, what? Right. What is he doing?
And before
was hard.
We even started down that journey, I was like, house churches are for weirdos, the ultra prophetic, the disgruntled that just cluster, and for predators, you know.
Well, it was just, they house church often, I think it often, in many ways, like a decade ago, house churches were really, a lot of times they couldn't fit in a big church. And a lot of times it was because they weren't a little rebellious. I mean, whoever.
Who knows?
So, long story short, I really come up with, I feel like this is what the Lord's called us to do, is plant house churches. And then alongside of that, then the question is where we're going to move. And we really wrestled, and we're just going to be honest here. We started out by saying, okay, we don't want to go internationally. It was talking with our kids as well, including the car. We don't want to go internationally. So it's kind of anywhere but Kansas City. Because we had been here, and at that moment in time, I think Kansas City and the Internet House of Prayer were kind of the same thing.
Right.
And so Jennifer got an invitation to come and speak at a women's gathering with The Bridge, Randy and Kelsey Bolander, and that's in Kansas City. And you asked me if I wanted to go. I said, no, I don't want to go. And as it kind of got closer, I don't know, I said, okay, I'll go with you. So we came here, and it was, during the weekend, I don't even know how it all came together, but we felt we're supposed to move to Kansas City. So long story short, June, right? June of 2021?
July, yeah.
So July 2021,
Yeah.
moved to Kansas City. I made it very clear with the leadership of IHOP, we're moving here to plant a house churches, because we wanted to plant several. And so I told them I'll tend the prayer room, but I'm not going to join staff. And part of it at the time was, my conclusion at that time was, every time I touch the International House of Prayer, it impacts me negatively. Meaning, so I come to the conclusion, I don't want to be on staff, but I still believe in prayer, intercession, and so I'll come to the prayer room, but but I'm not going to join staff.
You could be a local pastor and benefit from attending the prayer room, and you don't have to be on staff.
Correct.
And be your own person. That's totally a legitimate expression.
And so we launched the church. What day was it? October 6th?
Yep, 2021.
2021, Wednesday night, we started in our house. And it was truly an experiment. We kind of even let people know this is a little bit of an experiment. And later that year, in the kind of November, December 2021, it grabbed me. And I'm like, I want to do this. I kind of think maybe we're supposed to, but I want to do this. And so we decided we're not going to have a website. We're not going to do any social media. We're just going to do kind of word of mouth, and we're just going to gather. And we gathered around some foundational ideas: discipleship, maturing into Christ-likeness, which means I love my enemy and I love my neighbor, and the way we love each other, and people come amongst us, they'll find Christ. So discipleship is best done in relationships. So we want to have healthy emphasis on healthy community. So there are these foundational ideas, and it was, we gained momentum. We were growing, and so
and not just growing, we enjoyed it.
Yes.
Like, I was loving what we were doing. The relational aspect that we just valued and put ourselves out there personally, like, okay, this is us. This is.
We were pretty transparent.
We were very transparent. Maybe, now I'm going, maybe a little too transparent. but people knew our stuff.
But we were meeting in smaller groups on Sundays and house churches. And so we had 3 going, just kind of speeding up through 2022, 2023. And then in 2023, we had kind of a couple other families we were talking with. And so
getting ready to plant at least 2 more.
So I think probably by the end of 2023, we were looking to have maybe 5 house churches. And so we would meet in houses, for 6 weeks. And then our kind of desire was then to come back together. And it was, I was loving it. Actually, I really enjoyed it. I felt like I want to do my faith this way. It was beautiful. And then August 1st, 2023. That day's going to be a big day, probably for the rest of our lives, because it was the day that Dee Perkins and her husband Deborah Perkins came to our house and told us her story. And, you know, it was a story we could not unhear. And so basically, August and September, I talked with other leaders, and that was it.
There was a lot going on behind the scenes.
Oh my gosh.
And people don't know that.
No.
And so even some of the criticism is, you went straight to social media. Not at all. Mm-mm. The hours and hours and hours and hours of conversation that was happening behind closed doors. Yeah, there was a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't have to get into all the nuance of all this, but
that was just,
it was overwhelming.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean, I remember we started to get telephone calls at 7 a.m, and maybe our last call was at 1 a.m. Not every day was like that,
no,
but those first
many days were
those
like that.
first few, I don't know, weeks even, it was intense.
It was intense. And you know, so October 2023 happens. You know, October, what's the exact date now? I should know this date. I signed that letter with Wes Martin, Brian Kim, and dropped that letter. And that was the culmination of, to me, a process that was biblically based. Mm-hmm. And then all of hell unleashed on us in October, November, December. I've never experienced anything like that. I've never felt darkness in my life like that. There was
the intimidation, the threats.
There was a spiritual element to this journey that I didn't know was, to be honest with you, I'd never experienced. The darkness that we held, and just I can kind of still feel some of it. It was like, oh my gosh, it was so intense. You know, and we interviewed Ron Cantor a couple weeks ago, and we talked about, you know, the loss that he went through, and yet he had said, I would do it again. And I want to say, just in response to that, I think I was so naive to really, you know, what this was going to cost. I knew it was going to be crazy. I mean, I'm outing Mike Bickle, and
but we had hope in the beginning that he would do the right thing and that everyone else would do the right thing.
Yeah. So, but he said I would do it again, and I would do it again. I think now I would know more exactly what it's going to cost, and that's the part for me. I miscalculated what the journey was going to be, and I'm discovering that's often the way it is with God.
Yeah.
You say yes, and you've got, you know, a picture of how you think it's going to turn out, and oh my, that turned out different, you know. And so I also want to say, though, that the Lord sustained us. The Lord sustained us, and I'm very, very grateful. So what, in my opinion, turned the tide in a major way was when Tammy Woods came out in January of 2024. Because up until then, every conversation I had to prove my point. And then when it came out that this had happened to Tammy when she was 14 years old, that is when the snowball began to roll. Mm-hmm. And it was a game changer.
And locally, what was happening to discredit Deborah was horrendous.
Horrendous.
What was being said about her locally, what was being said about her husband locally, it was sick.
Horrendous.
And I remember thinking, get out of town, move.
Yeah.
I mean,
horrendous.
What they endured, and then the money they lost. It's everything. It's unbelievable. So I'll just say this is slightly off topic, but here's what I'm angry about. When people say, oh, you guys spoke up because you have financial gain through this. I was like, what? Well, I don't know anyone who has gained anything financially by speaking up. I don't know who they are. No victim has, not one victim has gained.
Or advocate in this process.
Exactly. Or advocate. No one that I know has gained anything financially.
It's only cost.
Yes, by doing the right thing. Yeah. That's it. Here's what I've gained. I have peace, and I can sleep at night, and I can look my kids in the eye. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. And I have peace with God.
Yeah.
And so I'm also now become a huge believer in just at a whole nother level how holistic we are.
Yeah.
And this journey, this battle we're in this age, it's real. And so we were supposed to go on vacation January 2024, and Jennifer steps off the steps and breaks her ankle. Has to have surgery. It's pretty serious.
All kinds of stuff in there. Rods and pins and screws.
So we canceled our vacation.
And so all of this is still going on. Now I basically, my foot is up for 6 weeks. So your workload just doubled.
Yeah. It was
we're pastoring the
intense.
church.
Yeah.
We're heavy into the advocate group stuff. And now you're everything.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, May, we went to a wedding. The wedding is April, right? Zion Bolender's wedding?
March.
Went to a wedding. And we're at a wedding of a friend of ours. And a friend of mine introduced me to his brother. And his brother's, I said, hey, and we get talking about what he does. And he's a cardiologist. And I'm like, hey, man, I have a bicuspid valve, and that means my aorta valve. I had 2 flaps instead of 3.
You and Bono.
Yeah, but I just found out, yes, Bono and
your best friend Bono.
Yeah, my best friend Bono. We've had the same surgery.
In the name of love, baby.
So he says, well, come on by. And so I put it off for a couple months, to be honest with you. And I thought, you know what, I should go. And so sitting in his office, his office, and he says to me, I'm a little concerned. He goes, your heart rate's 100 right now, and you're just sitting here in front of me. And so, long story short, I got a CT scan done, and within like an hour, I went to the doctor in the morning. We're paid by cash, so I went to a CT scan that afternoon. And within an hour of the CT scan, he phones me and says, I think you're probably going to have surgery, open heart surgery, to fix your aorta. We do want to check your valve. And so, long story short, they checked my valve.
And that's when he is like, within 6 months. No.
Yeah,
later.
There's no real rush, but we want to stay on this, and then check my valve. And they're like, we want this done in a week or 2. That was the type of.
It was intense.
And then in that same moment, Jennifer has these spots show up in her mouth. And this is where I'm just saying there is a spiritual element to this. And then the impact of stress on the body, I'm just like, it's insane. So spots show up in her mouth.
The dentist says, looks like cancer. Just what you want to hear.
So
turns out not to be cancer, but I still had to have surgery to have everything removed.
So you go to the dentist. He goes, looks like cancer. Next day I go to the surgeon. Yeah, this is bad. We want the surgery done as soon as possible. So I'm just like, it was insanity. Just the pressure and just everything was going on. It seemed like everything was on fire. So I had to open heart surgery August last year. And
I don't have cancer.
you didn't have cancer. And so we come into the fall and we're just like a little bit of shell shock, and things are moving. I'm really grateful for Tikkun. It has cost them so much to carry the weight of this investigation, and the pastoral reference team and all that's been so much for them. But I am so grateful for what they've done.
Stepping into an area that they had no experience. Just like us. We had no experience in what we're doing.
And that's where it's like a learning curve, and so things are not always done right. But I am so grateful for all of them, you know. And we've all had to learn through this process. Long story short, the church in the fall of last year, we couldn't get on the same page. And as we're coming into 2025, I was really wrestling with, how do we get back to our original vision? And I'm trying to cast vision, and people didn't want to hear it. And the challenge we had was, I get why you don't want to hear it.
Totally.
You have just walked through, you know, Joel said, one of the greatest crises in the evangelical church in recent history, and you're at the epicenter of it. And I get you don't want to respond to vision.
Totally.
So that was our challenge. Our community, we had 3 house churches. We're kind of at very different places. Some were like, you know what, I'm ready to kind of move on. And others are going, we just went through a nuclear storm and I can't move on.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was it was challenging, and we wanted to look after and care for this community, but we're also going, if we don't do something, we're going to be unhealthy in a minute, like in a year and a half from now. You know, and so it was really a challenging, you know, what do we do with the church, with this community, Lord? What are you saying?
Because everyone loved it. Like, truthfully,
yes.
We really did enjoy each other. There were incredible formed relationships. There was so much transformation that took place. Like
maturity, health, like loving
There's
God.
Something about doing your faith in the context of relationships, which it seems like, well, yeah, of course, but very rarely have I seen it walked out.
Right.
And it was beautiful. Like, stuff came up from my life that I didn't even clue into, that I feel like our community provided a safe place for me to be able to go places in my childhood journey that I hadn't gone before. And so it was bearing fruit in my life as a leader. Like
profound
like fruit.
Truly foundational work. And
to the point where I don't care if people like me or don't like me. Like I didn't have to play the game. I just didn't have to play the game. I got to be me. I got to be vulnerable. I got to be raw. And it was that aspect of what we had done with our church was healing for me as a minister.
Yes.
Because usually when you're vulnerable with people, it gets used against you. Like, there's so much, oh, my pastor, he can't be real, da-da-da. Well, maybe he's got a few stories of being burned when he was real. You know what I mean? Like,
we've got stories. We got stories of being burned when we were trying to be real.
Right.
Not trying. We were being real. Yeah.
So this, us even talking about we closed down our church. It kind of almost makes me feel a little sick that it's not entertainment. That this was. I love these people. I loved what we formed together. I loved how the Lord met us in our weakness and our true reach for one another. And I loved knowing the names of people's kids. I liked hitting their soccer games and cheering them on. There was just a lot that was so, so beautiful. And I believe everyone else would agree that this was good.
Yeah.
But like you said, Dwayne, in order for people to heal, people are going, I can't be talking about IHOP all the time. But yet there's curiosity. So you run into that person at church and they had just heard something, and pretty soon, whether someone wanted to or not, you're right back in that same conversation that you said you didn't want to have anymore because you wanted to pull away. And so it was almost like a magnet.
It was just, yeah. And we're bumping each other's scabs because we're trying to heal, and bumping each other's scabs and getting clarity. And and I do want to say, we being Jennifer and I, needed the community to walk through what we walked through.
We could not have done it without that.
And that's where
Don't you agree?
100%. And that's where I see the power of community.
Yes.
It changed my life.
Yes.
Like the constant texts and emails and prayers and it was insanity.
Yeah, when lies are being said about us publicly, online, and all kinds of craziness, our church knew us and they knew the truth. And just those texts, hey, we see you, we love you, we know it's real. It's really, really meaningful.
It was rich, and I needed it.
I needed it. Yeah.
So we got our vacation in January 2025, and it was incredible. And I think it was on the third day before we were to come back to KC, the Firefly report came out from T-Coon had hired the Firefly to do the investigation. And the report came out, and so it took a little bit of our energy in the last couple of days, especially mine, and so when we came back to Kansas City, pretty much just right after we got back, I just felt the Lord just whisper in my ear, your assignment is finished. And that, at first I just thought, you know what, I think I'm done with kind of the advocate role that I played. I'm kind of done with that. And now I can kind of focus on the church. Let's get back to the vision and get back. And so didn't know exactly how to do that,
and we thought, okay, Alpha course.
Yeah.
That'll kind of regroup us.
Yeah, we got Alpha going, but as we're doing that, both Jennifer and I are going, I think the Lord's speaking more to us. And so for about 6 weeks, Jennifer and I, pretty much daily, Lord, what are you saying? And oh my, I think that actually the Lord is also talking about our church. And I had to really wrestle with why the Lord brought us to Kansas City. I had been saying for 2023 and 2024, up till January 2025, I had been saying the Lord brought us here to plant a church, and then in that He also then used me to just help confront everything that went on. And because people would ask us, well, are you guys going to leave? Are you going to move? Or what are you going to do? And I said, no, we're here to plant this church, and this is what God has called us to do. And I'd said, look, man, I could have done what I did from another city. And I had to re-look at that. And the reality is I would not have probably done what I did if I had been in another city. And the reason is that I had a couple of really key conversations that opened me up to the idea that there was real darkness there. And it was 3 or 4 conversations that even prepped us to then hear August 1st of 2023. And I just don't think that I would have stood up like I did if I was in another city. And I had to own that. And part of the reason I didn't want to own that is because I loved what we were doing with our church, and I felt the Lord had called us to plant the church. And I know He did. But I now kind of have rephrased that to where, no, July of 2021, the Lord led us here for the purpose of confronting what was happening, and then we were to pastor people through that storm. And it was just really hard for me to come to grips with that. But on the flip side, a lot of things make sense when I even go back and look at my journey starting in 2008. So there's just a lot of things that made sense. And so we came to the conclusion, this is what the Lord brought us here for. And in that, I found some gems in how I want to do church. And it was really formative for me. Mm-hmm. It was like truly paradigm shifting. And so there's things that we discovered in our doing these house churches that I want to keep. So February, March, April, we reach out to our leadership team of the church, and we kind of have a conversation with them. And the first meeting we had was, hey, this is what we feel like the Lord is saying. We're to close our church. And we started using the word sunset. It's just a little bit more eloquent. And
it wasn't a decision made that we were trying to convince them. This is what we were thinking. And I was expecting a whole lot more pushback, and that we were starting a conversation, because there's all kinds of things like, okay, let's regroup and turn the 3 houses into one and all that kind of stuff. But long story short, everyone was, yeah, this is right.
In the first meeting, there was one couple that they said, hey, we're not sure. But at the end of the night, the guy said to me, if I was you, Dwayne, I would probably close this. And so we kind of ended like, let's take a break and we'll come back in a week. And we ended up doing that meeting on Zoom because one of the team members was struggling, had just kind of come out through a journey with cancer. And so we had a couple of people sick. We didn't want to get anybody sicker. So we did it on Zoom. It was a 3-hour meeting. It was brutal. Because everybody came and said, no, we feel like this is what the Lord is just saying, that we're to sunset our church. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is happening. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, how do you do this in a healthy way? How do you tell the community? It was brutal.
It was brutal. I think, the metaphor I've been using is we've been at war, and we were medics in a war zone.
Yes.
And this isn't to be offensive for people who are really at war. You know what I mean? Like, this is not war, but, metaphorically, spiritually speaking, we were in a war, and we were keeping people alive, and we're bandaging wounds, and we're
banding each other's wounds.
Exactly. And because in the midst of it, we're trying to keep ourselves together for our community. And we hadn't, we had, like you said, in years, like in 2013 or 2008 and then 2013, we had already processed a ton related to IHOP about the dysfunction that we didn't appreciate and didn't want to emulate anymore. Correct. So that had become clear. Even messaging, we had already made some tweaks.
Like significant shifts.
Yes. But, so we're army medics, so to speak, keeping people alive. And then we look at each other and go, we're not okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at now, recognizing we need a break. We're not okay.
Yeah.
And I personally have been going down a very, very deep, reflective path, asking all kinds of questions, not about, is Jesus God? The questions about the tenets of my faith, I wrestled through because I wasn't raised in a Christian home. So I had the benefit of having to wrestle that through and choosing it with my eyes wide open. So I've already fought that fight. But it was the fact that I've been in full-time ministry.
Like, you really wrestled with God.
Yeah.
Like, or when you got saved,
Yes.
and in that journey of salvation,
I don't need to go back there and do that, redo all that. I believe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we've been in full-time ministry for decades. And, so I'm just like, wow, this is intense. And yeah, there's a lot to say about that I won't say right now.
But we've been in deep reflection.
Deep
I think,
reflection. And we're exhausted.
And I think that, like, when the 3-hour Zoom that we kind of said, we're to close our church, someone asked me, Dwayne, how are you doing with this news? It was near the end. And I just started weeping. And so it was a little uncomfortable, to be honest with you. But this has been incredibly sad for us, just because we really did love it. And I think we came to the conclusion, look, we have come through this journey, and the intensity of what we've walked through has now become the bond that has holding us together. And I think it's going to be hard to get back to the original vision, back to a healthy community that represents Christ, that then truly wants to represent and share the gospel. And we wept for 20 minutes. The last part of that Zoom call was so uncomfortable because I couldn't control myself, to be honest with you.
Sissy.
And we came to the conclusion, 100%, it was a unanimous decision by the leadership, the house pastors, and then also some of the leadership team that we had. And so we shared with the community. It was really difficult. And some have really still it's been very challenging. But also I think one of the things that I'm just growing to love is the body. And I mean the capital C body. And
that'd be a B.
What?
The body is starts
capital
with a B.
C church. I'm seeing people that were in our house church go to really other different streams within the body, and it's beautiful. There's just some amazing churches in Kansas City that people are going to, and I actually think it's incredibly healthy that people are going to different expressions, experiencing different things in the body
that had no association with the International House of Prayer.
Right.
I think that's really important for people. People in our community in particular, they need to see what the body of Christ looks like outside of what they were told it looks like. And even, we had a couple of conversations with the pastor of an Anglican church here. And so we were asking questions about how they do the children and, just all kinds of questions because we're trying to recommend churches for our community. And he's like, people can come, they can just sit. We don't require anything of people. In fact, you can't volunteer until you've been here for 6 months. And I'm like, you know what? A lot of our people, that's what they need. Just to be able to sit for a minute and catch their breath. Because the house church, as much as I love it, it requires a whole lot more of individuals attending than a normal church does. Because limited resources. So we're all volunteering. We're the children's worker. We're this, we're that. And you can't even walk into a house church and not tell someone if you're having a bad day because they've made eye contact with you and they can tell. Where you can hide, quote unquote, in another church in a way that actually is healthy. I'm not talking hiding in a bad way. I'm talking recovering. And there are churches all over the city, Kansas City, I'm sure they're everywhere, that they just want you to come and receive, and they're not demanding anything of people. And eventually you want to participate because I think there's something about, owning our faith by volunteering, by doing different things. But from where our community had come from, they needed the space to just sit and not feel like they're a failure if they were just sitting for a minute. And I think that's beautiful.
And I think it's, in the long run, it's been, I think it'll be healthy for people. And there's beauty in the body of Christ. And so I think going to another church is actually in many ways a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Because you're, I don't know, there's just a ton I could say on that, but it's not really what this is about. So long story short, we closed our church, and it put us into, oh my gosh, what is Dwayne and Jennifer going to do? And so we're kind of still very much in that place. What are we going to do? You know, and so so we have a board that was on the church, and then we also have a nonprofit, and we'll get into all of that. But we had the same board members in both kind of
some of the same members
on the both boards, and so long story short, they came and said to us, "You guys need a sabbatical. It's non-negotiable." Actually, it was actually a really tough meeting for me, to be honest with you, but it was very clear that we were to take a sabbatical.
Because you were wanting to present some ideas about what's next.
Yeah.
And the board was going, hold on. We need to take care of you two.
Yeah.
And we don't want to hear what's next, because what's next is you need to rest.
And I appreciated their strength that they shared that with. So long story short, we're going on a sabbatical.
Yeah.
We're actually leaving in a couple of days. And so we're gonna, and part of what gets us, just even life is just visiting some of the places where we have ministered. So we're actually going to Brazil, and we're going to spend a significant amount of time in Brazil for the rest of the year. And then we're also going to go to South Africa for 3 months as well. And we have friends that are down there, and a couple different pockets of friends actually. And they said, "Come on down, man. We just and so we're gonna. It's there's part of us where, man, wouldn't everybody like to go to South Africa? You know what I mean? And so there's that part of it for me where it's incredible, some of the blessings that Jennifer and I have walked through, and just our international traveling and experiences. And so we do come alive actually in the nations. When I was 6 years old, I lived in Zimbabwe. It used to be called Rhodesia when I lived there. And so I think very early on, the Lord put the nations within my heart, and Jennifer wanted to go at 19. And so I do think that there's part of that is we still do have this aspect in our lives. And so we're going to go on a sabbatical. The one thing that we've actually enjoyed doing is this podcast. And it kind of actually...
It's easy for us.
And it gives us life, actually. Yeah. It's an outlet for us. And so we're going on the road. We're taking this on the road, people. So we're going to be doing... the camera setup's going to be significantly different. Hopefully we'll have pretty close to the same quality, but I cannot guarantee that.
Yeah, because we won't have Chloe.
I'm going to be doing all this, and I don't really know what I'm doing half the time. But we're going to do the podcast, so we're going to keep doing that. We're going to be doing a lot of personal reflection.
A lot of reading, study.
And, one of the questions that I want to ask, and I am asking, I think I even started asking in 2021, Jesus, what do you want to do with your church? And I want to wrestle with that question. And I don't think it is so much a doctrinal change that needs to come. I think Martin Luther did that for us, and he got us on the right path. But I do believe that there's some emphasis that maybe needs to be refocused on. And then I also believe the praxis, the practical outworking of church, and wrestling with that topic. And I am not a guru. I don't want to position myself as a guru, but I do want to participate in a conversation on change in the church. and I want to provoke change, conversation, and ask some hard questions. And so I feel like, we're kind of, without a doubt, God is disorientating the church. It's just without a doubt. He's shaking us. And so I want to be asking, what do you want to change? And then how do we change? And so that's kind of partly what I want to study, is just kind of look at that, do the podcast, do lots of reading.
And I want to have some joy moments.
Yeah.
Like, our life has been so intense for so long. And, one thing that I've realized, that just Jesus isn't as intense as I made him be. You know what I mean? Like, when we moved to Kansas City, I used to read a lot. I stopped reading because if I was to be reading, it should only be the Word of God. And so I am trying to recover that part of myself that finds joy in being outside, beauty in looking at water and flowers, and just recognizing that we're not just spirit. I'm not just a spiritual being. I am more than that. There's physical aspects to it. I have taste buds for a reason. I have senses for a reason. And just reclaiming the beauty of God in the normal. And that's what I hope this sabbatical affords me. The space to find joy in creation, in normal things, in a conversation, in a cup of coffee, and to be able to go slow enough to not miss it. And yes, I want to be intentional, but yes, I also want to be spontaneous and just get back the joy of the Lord inside of me again, instead of it's all intense and we're all going to burn, and you know what I mean?
100%.
And
no,
it'll be good.
I think it's going to be phenomenal. So January 2026, what are you going to be doing, John?
Don't know. Like, literally don't know.
I don't either. I have no idea, actually.
So we're going to be gone until January. We don't know what's next.
Right.
We're open to anything. Me in particular, I'm just like, whatever, anything.
Yeah, and we don't know what we're going to be doing.
So pray for us.
I think as you walk through something like this, it needs to be disoriented. It has, and so we feel a little bit disorientated. And so one of the words I'm looking at is, what is reorientation? And so what do you want to correct in me, my thinking?
Yep.
In my what I've done, and then where do we want to make some course correction?
Yep.
Reorientation. And that's, I'm with Jennifer. I'm a little bit type A personality, and one of the things that I need to learn is, and Jennifer's been highlighting this actually in our marriage, is his yoke is easy and I am intense, and there's a place where intensity is really good, but also if you are intense all the time, you don't experience that lightness, and then you don't slow down. And the rhythms, I think, that are God ordained, I have not walked in them.
Yeah.
And I want to chill a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn to walk with patience with the Lord, and then I think it'll become, actually, the load is easier. And I like to be, I am kind of more intense in my
everything.
And so maybe that's what caused me to have a open heart surgery. Maybe. Probably a lot. So anyways, there's a lot I want to learn, just reorientation. And so, so pray for us. And then we're going to keep on interviewing some people. We got already some lined up, and then just be looking, be following. We're going to, we're throwing around even some more, like we might be doing some more communication, even in our processing of while we're on sabbatical. So just stay tuned if you're interested. If you find, you might think of other people, forward this, subscribe, like, hit the ding. What else?
I don't know. This
Hit the bell.
This is what we're really bad at.
Hit the bell. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to us as we dialogue, as we journey. So big change is coming for us. And I think it's also coming for the body of Christ.
Yeah.
And so we truly want to, even in this podcast, help people like validate their disillusionment even.
Yeah.
Meaning, no, you should be asking questions. And in it, let's have a dialogue around Jesus. What are you changing within us?
Yeah.
And what is the trajectory of your church? And so, yeah.
So in short, we fired ourselves from our own church.
And, yeah, now we're living on unemployment.
Well, not really.
Would have been helpful, actually.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Grace. Stay tuned for our next episode as it comes out. Grace. And until next time.
See ya.